ideas. And he talked about the Edinburgh meetings in 1910. He also tried in 1980 to create a global network, and both efforts were not long-standing. So it was on his heart to have a global conference in 2010, which ended up being the 2010 Tokyo Global Mission Consultation. And some of us got to be a part of that. Out of that then was a vision to create some sort of an ongoing cooperative network for mission practitioners and missionaries and many others to participate in what it would take to evangelize and see the Great Commission completed. So after 2010 and starting in 2012 or 2013, that's when the Global Great Commission Network was created. And a few of us kind of took up that banner to go forward to try to fulfill the vision of a global cooperative network. And I'm going to stop there except to say it's changed since then to the point that it has been a intentional focus on a grassroots movement, definitely not a top-down, top-led organization. And that's why I'm so excited to see what's happening here today with the Africa Conference. And so the vision then is to see all peoples discipled in our generation, and seeing that come up from the grassroots and a cooperative level where we can share with each other. You can help others, they can help you. You can share the resources and the needs to see the task completed in our generation. So that's a little bit of the background. Randy can probably pick up on that, but that's my personal involvement and how we've been working for some time. And to this point today, to see how Africa has taken this and is running with it and has the participation that I see. That's very exciting to see the vision starting to come together. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Hello, Patience and Randy and everyone. If I just come in quickly here, I think
yes,
a brief introduction.
There is some background noise. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Very well, yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to give us very quick ideas of who the panelists are. David Hobb, who has just spoken. David is the lead facilitator for the global steering team of the Global Great Commission Network. And David has just given us that beautiful background of GGCN. Dr. Randy Mitchell and Paul Radhakrishnan are GGCN Global Ambassadors, and Paul will be particularly helpful because he's going to give us some understanding because he is coordinator for Asia for the Global Great Commission Network. And Dr. Randy has been here right from the beginning of the origins of both the GGCN and the Tokyo 2010 conference. And so it's such a joy to have these leaders being able to provide understanding about what the network is. So Dr. Randy, let me turn it over to you now. And Patience, please go ahead now.
Thank you very much, Brother Ferdinand. We really appreciate the background, and the participant can make informed decisions of partnering or joining GGCN because now they understand the origin and the purpose of GGCN. Much appreciated, sir. Then now I want us to move on to get briefly again the statement of faith of GGCN and then the values. So we need to understand what is the statement of faith and what are the primary values that underpin or undergird the network. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Well, I wanted just to comment very briefly about the origin of the network itself. I think as we came out of 2010 and the global gathering in Tokyo, there was a renewed sense that the church, and when I talk about the church, I'm not just talking about mission structures, agencies, and organizations, but the global church, including denominations, church networks, and even down to the local church, has an important role in seeing every people group discipled. And so it's not it's not just organizations and the mission structures that existed that were driving the future of mission, but the local church, right down to the grassroots level. And so the network exists. The network exists for that purpose, to encourage engagement and involvement right down to a national level, a denominational level, a local church level. And I think that was very important. Part of the reason that the GGCN was created is that most other networks, or all other networks, were basically focused on just serving the mission community, excluding most local churches and local church networks. Now, as far as who we are, then we're a grassroots movement, a network that is encouraging mission engagement on a grassroots level, working to connect the global church, right? The global church and global mission movement right down to the local church, and the local church right up to the global mission movement.
Thank you very much for this clarity, sir. It really gives insight into the great work that GGCN is involved in, and we really appreciate to understand the importance of touching the grassroots. So this is really critical, and we have actually alluded to some aspects of the next question, which is question 2, but we are going to get into that one in detail. Thank you very much. So can you maybe briefly give us the statement of faith and the values that undergird the network?
Well, I'll ask maybe Ferdinand or Paul, they could speak to our statement of faith, and then we can have a discussion about our values.
Okay. All right. So you also alluded to the origin and where the Tokyo conference. Then now, could you just tell us briefly about the footprint? Where exactly, as GGCN spread, we just need to briefly understand the marks of GGCN. Thank you. The footprints.
Why don't you talk about GGCN in Asia, and then Ferdinand can pick up on that on Africa, and those are the two main areas that we're involved in, but have some representation in other parts of the world. So can we do that? Maybe Paul can talk about India and Asia, and then Ferdinand kind of give the African vision, perhaps. Is that okay?
Great, yes. That's appreciated, sir. Can we hear someone who will give us the footprint in Asia, and then Brother Ferdinand in Africa? Anyone can come first. Thank you.
Yes,
okay.
Paul, please.
Thank you so much. I'm really so happy. Can you listen to me?
We can hear you, sir. Thank you. Go ahead, Brother Paul.
Okay. It's echoing. Unable to understand the voice. Okay, thank you. Actually, I'm so happy to join with you all, especially to see David in this panel now. He has a lot of issues, but by God's grace and he's willingly he joined. No, it's really a sacrifice. I thank God for that. Okay, in Asia, especially in India, GGCN is a voluntary movement like other parts of the world. So it's a purely voluntary one. So there is no paid staff or there is no paid leadership. First, it was a challenge to us to mobilize the leaders as well as the business people to join hands to reach the communities, the unreached people groups, to disciple the newborns in Christ. This was a challenge in the beginning. But by God's grace, so many leaders nowadays, they are coming forward to join with us. They understand, they understood our aim and our purpose and our vision. Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing is some network leaders. Even I'm in GGCN, I'm also a part of India Missions Association, Missionary Upholders Trust, and in some other national missionary movements. So some leaders thought that it might be a competitive one to their existing networks. But by God's grace, we helped them to understand that we are not existing to compete any network or association. Just we are here to to help them in many ways to reach their goals in their state and countries. So nowadays, many leaders are very willing to join with us, especially in India. In India. Then other thing is purely an autonomous body. Nobody is controlling from the top to lower level. So it's a purely autonomous one. In the beginning, some of our leaders thought that somebody may induce some doctrines or they're willing something. They thought like that. But now they understand that we are not inducing anybody. We are not controlling anybody. So every state in India, in every state, we have the local committees. Every local committee has their own focus areas because, like Africa, India is a country of so many states. Every state has their own language, native language, their own culture, their own fooding habits, their own beliefs system. Everything is different to state to state. So in the beginning, it was a challenge to us. But now, by God's grace, we form the regional committees with the regional representation from the church leadership, from the mission leadership, from the business community, from both male and female. So it was a challenge in the beginning, but now, by God's grace, it's moving very well. As David and Randy informed us, it's purely interdenominational. We are not from a single denomination. Pentecostals are here, charismatic groups are here, independents are here, mainland churches like CSI, CNI, and different group people are in our committees, and they are doing in the very good way nowadays. Then in the we our structure is very unique than other existing associations or networks in India and Asia. We are giving importance to all. Do you say anything, sister? I couldn't hear you.
Go ahead, Paul. We are listening to you. Please go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And in the beginning, we formed the national committee with national leaders. Then we found the regional leaders. Now we are appointing the state level leaders to take forward the GGCN throughout India. As well as we already started in Sri Lanka, Nepal, we started it, and it's growing up. By God's grace, next week I will be in Nepal to teach and train one a restricted country leaders in Nepal. So through the GGCN, through some other organizations, we are representing there. We are going to helping there. So similarly, in Asia also, we are making some attempts in many countries also, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, in Myanmar. We are chatting with them. After the COVID, we were unable to work very hard or very serious past 2 or 3 years. Now we restarted all our works. It's going, by God's grace, very well. Okay, so is the reality of GGCN in Asia. We already done so many seminars and conferences, both in India as well as in Nepal and Sri Lanka, for the church pastors, for the missionaries, especially for the crossroads. We have done it. We have received so many very good positive feedbacks. Many of them requesting us to come over there again to organize such a conferences and seminars, physical conferences and physical seminars. When we have done the seminars and conference in the past, the local organizing people, the local committee, they met most of the expenses. Myself and my co-workers, we just done for our travel expenses and food accommodation only. The local people met all the expenses uh, to organize the meetings, to prepare the meeting calls, and they spend the money for the food and accommodation for the participants. So it's going on very well now, even though some challenges are there, but by God's grace, we are moving. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Paul. We would like to have David, make some comments. David has made a lot of sacrifice to be able to be with us this evening.
Yes.
Then after David, I could share a bit and provide some understanding of the Africa context as well. Thank you, David.
All right. Again, my apologies. I do need to run, but I wanted to answer a couple of the questions that the sister has asked. Statement of faith, we haven't developed our own, but based on the Lausanne Covenant. So you can find that on our website or go to the Lausanne movement, a very basic evangelical statement of faith that would represent, and again, we would cooperate with the Lausanne and many others. What are some of the values they've been touched on? The grassroots value has been touched on, the global church. Randy talked about that. We value all ministries, not one more important than the others. And again, go to our website and look at some of those specifics. I think we came up with 5 or 6 specific guidelines. In fact, I'm starting to write on some of those now to spell those out a little bit better. And so it's to the point of my emphasis right now. But very inclusive and very comprehensive. We feel it needs to be the whole church. To accomplish the task, the whole church needs to be involved. And that's all that are listening here and many more. And we want to provide a platform for that cooperation to happen. And I'm sure there'll be some discussion later of an online platform that we provided for that. And just want to see the participation of not just a few, as Randy talks about, that those at the table participating are creating the discussion. Not invited necessarily, but you are the table. You are the ones that are going to accomplish the task. And we're excited to see what's happening. This is very encouraging. And I just wanted to kind of add those summary and appreciate all that you're doing, Ferdinand and others. Greetings to all. I will sign off here in a minute, but thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you so much, David. This is wonderful to be able to have you, Randy, and Paul on the call tonight. We have like 130 participants in this very first Accelerate conference, GGCN Africa. And just to come back to some of the questions that Dr. Patience asked, GGCN, my involvement with GGCN came out of certain convictions. First of all, you had David mention the 2010 Tokyo conference, which was a global missions consultation taking place 100 years after the 1910 Edinburgh, Scotland missions conference, which was the first global missions conference, by the way. So 100 years later, people like Dr. Ralph Winter and other mission leaders felt that leaders should come again together and strategize on how to complete the task of reaching the world with the gospel. And David was talking about Dr. Winter's vision of having a network so that those consultations don't just end as consultation, but they become an ongoing cooperation that can then foster discipling the nations. So that's the brief background. And one of the things that has drawn me to GGCN is the fact that it's a grassroots movement. Like David mentioned, we need the whole church to complete the task of reaching the nations. Tomorrow, by the grace of God, we'll be looking at how we can mobilize the marketplace and several other sessions on how we can disciple Africa. And everyone has a place at this table. That's exactly the point. The other thing about GGCN that will help us is that it's your opportunity to connect to the world, to connect to what God is doing around the world. I'll give you a simple example. Many of us are interested in missions, but you don't even know when the mission conferences are taking place. You don't know where the mission leaders are. You know, there are some people who seem to have captured, in quotes, the mission franchise, and they're the one with all the information. They're the one that go to all the conferences. And GGCN is saying, look, this thing is available to every believer. And GGCN will help you to connect to what God is doing around the world, to connect to your passion. You may be in Africa and you have a vision for reaching different parts of the world. Through GGCN, you are going to meet people that will help to facilitate that. That's why the three principal words, which I hope everybody can remember with GGCN, is number one, connect. Connect. Just remember that word, connect. Number two is communicate. Communicate. And then number three is collaborate. At GGCN, you'll be able to connect with other mission-minded leaders. You'll be able to communicate, and in communicating, you'll be able to share resources. If you go to the GGCN website, for instance, you will see a myriad of missions organizations, resources, mission agencies doing different things, attending to children, doing media, those that are reaching different areas. Imagine all of this information available to every believer so that all of us can then collaborate. The truth is that God is not going to give the nations to one agency or to one individual. We all need to come together, and we need the grassroots. Look what happened during the COVID crisis. It became clear that many of the big churches and big agencies, they were disconnected from the grassroots, and ministry came back down to the grassroots. So this is what GGCN is about. We are not about competing with anybody. Our question really is, how can we serve you? How can GGCN serve the mission enterprise, your network, your agency, your church? So this is briefly what GGCN is focusing on. And as to the statement of faith, David has mentioned the Lausanne Covenant, which is a standard statement of faith from the Lausanne movement. But you can also look at the Tokyo Declaration, which you will find on the GGCN website, which states exactly what this is all about. Scripture is the foundation, and missions is the passion that drives the GGCN vision. So in Africa, Randy, then Randy will come in. Yeah, in Africa here, we are developing along the same lines that Paul mentioned. We are beginning with the continent, and then we are coming down to the regions, and then now we are beginning to have people who serve as coordinators in several different countries. And GGCN needs you. You can help to coordinate GGCN in your own country, which is why we welcome you to please join the GGCN WhatsApp group. And then from there, we can get you over into the steering team so that you can begin to organize and provide leadership, even in your own country, how we can mobilize the grassroots, to make disciples. Yeah, Dr. Randy.
No, I just was going to say, thank you. That was so well said, Ferdinand. When we talk about inclusiveness, often what people hear is we're inviting you to join us. That's not our intent. Inclusiveness is we would like to join you. Okay, we want to serve you. We want to be a part of what you're doing. We want to try to enhance your ministries and the work that God's called you to in your particular regions. Another thing that I think is important is that we really value diversity. We don't want every ministry doing the same thing, each one serving in the same places. We value what you're doing. And the reality is that our diversity does not have to challenge or threaten our unity. We can still be unified around this cause of Christ. But there's something that I want to challenge everyone listening with. And this is something we were in our breakout sessions a moment ago. I don't know how many people were in our leftover group. And Ferdinand and Mark kept saying, oh, who has a comment? Who has something to say? Who has some input? And everyone was so quiet, waiting. I want to say to you that the reason that the GGCN exists is because we value your voice. You have a place at Christ's table, but we need you to speak up. We need you to speak up. We need to hear your voice. And that's so important in this conversation. We want to hear from you. Okay. That's really the critical role of the GGCN is to give you a voice because we believe in what you're doing.
Thank you very much, Dr. Randy. Thank you very much, Ferdinand. It was very loud and clear. I think now participants are beginning to understand what GGCN is all about and what GGCN is doing. I particularly like the three keywords of connect, communicate, and collaborate. And you have echoed it well, Dr. Randy, by saying you value people's voices. And I understand that GGCN is not about competing, but it's about collaborating. You need to enhance what people are doing out there. So this is very, very interesting. And as the body of Christ, we understand that grassroots it's actually critical because we are all belong to the body of Christ. So now, can you just share with us some challenges that we have faced in the process? Because I want to believe that people need practical experiences. So can you just share us some challenges and then you can then take us through some successes of GGCN? Thank you.
Well, Paul, why don't you speak to that? Because you spoke, Paul addressed several challenges and he could say some more, but he addressed the challenges of funding. He addressed challenges of conflict, of interest. He addressed a number of those. Paul, do you want to say some more about that?
Yes. First of all, I want to share about the funding of GGCN India and Asia. In our team, in our steering team of national level and in state level, we already brought both missionaries and pastors, as well as the tent makers, the business people, and others also, they are in the committee. So we all sat together and discuss about the funding. Whenever we organize any conference or seminars, we used to sit together and discuss it. The local people, mostly they volunteer to meet all the needs of the local expenses. That's the first thing. Second one is we, the resource people, as well as in the national committee, we are spending from our own pocket. So we are not expecting from others. Our church and our organizations, they are offering something. And from out of our pocket, we are spending the money for our travels, food, and accommodation as a resource people to share there, to go there and share and teach and train everything there. The local committee voluntarily raising the fund from their churches, from their donors. They are raising the fund and they are spending for the conferences in the local level. That is the first thing. Second one is, nowadays we are in the pipeline to change the committee members. In the beginning, we brought so many senior leaders also. Nowadays, they are unable to give the time for GGCN. They are so busy. Some of them are sick, physically sick. So just 2 months back, I sent a mail to all the participants of Tokyo 2010. If there is anybody willing to join in the national level, in the state level, or in the regional level, we send the mail to know their interest. Some of them responded so far. And we also told them that it's purely voluntary one, and they have to raise their own fund for their expenses, for their travel, for their food, for their accommodation, and everything, whatever they do for GGCN, they have to spend from their pocket, or they have to raise the fund from their side. That's in the funding area. I hope that you can understand that. Is it enough?
Thank you very much, Brother Paul. It's very clear. I hope all participants understand that it's from the people themselves who are involved in this mission. They open their hearts for the work of God because they spend from their own pockets, and they are doing so willingly. So God enables them to sponsor the work. So I think it's a critical takeaway for all of us to know that in the work of God, it's all about you. You are not looking up to someone to fund or to sponsor the work, but you look up to God to sponsor, and the resources which God has placed in your hand are important for you to use in the work of God. So now let us move on to look at the issue of collaboration. Perhaps, Brother David, you can take this one. How does GGCN collaborate with other mission organizations? We need to hear that from your practical experience with GGCN. Thank you, Brother David.
Yeah, Randy, go ahead.
I think David has had to leave us. But I would like to say a couple of things. I'll answer your last question. What are some things that we are accomplishing? What are some things that God is using us to accomplish as GGCN? And it also and it speaks to the issue of collaboration. So you will hear more about Connect. Connect is a virtual space that makes it possible for a global community to connect, communicate, and collaborate. Look, we are this church spread across the earth, but it's very difficult for us to connect, communicate, collaborate unless we have some form of virtual space to accomplish that. So the GGCN has created, you'll hear more about Connect, to encourage both intra-agency communication. So we have denominations, or we have agencies, or we have other networks that use Connect to communicate with their own community. We also created Connect for inter-agency communication. So that enables communication on the broadest level. This is a reflection of our desire to see collaboration happening. The GGCN has played minor roles in helping other networks start. We have played minor roles in helping other denominations and groups to gather by helping them to facilitate their meetings, meeting spaces. Recently, I'll just tell you a quick story. Recently, we have been participating, and I've been directly involved with the creation of a new mission network, and we've been serving them for the last about 18 months. A group of churches in Russia, as they were working to formulate a new network. Of course, when the war that has broke out, when that occurred, it affected our plans. It's just caused us to have to reevaluate and reassess how we move forward. But one of the things that we wanted to do was to show a sign of solidarity with the church, because the church in Kenya, the church in Nigeria, the church in India, the church in the United States, we're the church irrespective of our politics or our governments or governmental decisions. We're the church globally, irrespective of all of that. And so the GGCN framed a letter showing our solidarity and commitment to Christ's mission as the church. That letter was circulated to other networks, including the IMA in India, the largest mission network in Latin America, Comibam, the largest mission network in the United States, which is Mission Nexus. All of these networks and organizations signed this letter of love and support for the church, both in the Ukraine and in Russia. And we were able to circulate that. So these are ways that we're connecting, ways that we're practically connecting, ways that we're practically serving. And we think that's important as a network.
Yeah. If I may come in, one of the things that I find very important is the fact that I must not be a local champion when my father is a global God. Mm. Don't be a local champion just focused on you and your corner. Mm. Jesus said, lift up your eyes, look, God is at work. God is at work beyond your ministry, beyond your denomination. And that's why it's so important to connect. Look, I am increasingly being convinced that there is no way that we can accomplish the Great Commission if each of us insist on doing our own thing. It's impossible. Let me give you an example of what collaboration looks like. Paul is in India, and I am here in Nigeria, but through GGCN, we have been able to communicate and collaborate. And Randy, you might not have heard this before, but now we are adopting some missionaries in India, working with Paul. Can you imagine that? I lead a ministry in Nigeria, and now we have missionaries. Now, by the way, if you are trying to reach unreached people groups and India is not on your plan is not big enough, because that's the biggest place with unreached people groups. Is it like half or more of the UPGs in the world are in India? So our ministry now, we are networking with India through Paul to support missionaries reaching completely unreached peoples in India. And all of this is through GGCN. So GGCN is a platform from where you can, multiply your ministry to the ends of the earth by meeting people that you can collaborate with. And they provide information, they provide boots on the ground, and they provide perspectives that you never would have if all you did was to stay in your own corner. Yeah, Randy.
And one more example of this, as a follow-up to the letter that was sent to Russia, and many of you may not know this. I'm telling you this is not public knowledge. The Russian church, since the beginning of the war, has been mobilizing relief aid for the Ukrainian church.
Oh. Wow.
That's been happening since the very beginning. Our ministry was one of the first ones to fund a container of relief aid that was sent to the Russian church to be distributed among Ukrainians.
Wow.
And just recently, Paul, and I have to talk with Paul about this. We haven't had a chance to follow up, but Paul said to me, hey, there's people in India that would like to help fund some of the relief that the Russians are doing in Ukraine. You see, you can't do that. These things don't happen if there's not a platform, a network to help facilitate it.
Thank you very much, brethren, for this information. It's really helpful to all of us. We have really got a feel of what GGCN is all about and the successes of GGCN and the challenges. But again, I must say that the fact that we have been able to do it is actually encouraging to all of us. We have opened our minds to the bigger picture of what is in store for us and of the magnitude of God's work out there. In the interest of time, may we round up this session, ladies and gentlemen, so that we move on to the next session. And thank you for sharing the WhatsApp link. People who are interested in joining GGCN, they can join the WhatsApp group so that they are constantly posted on the developments and all the activities that GGCN Africa is engaged in. Thank you. Over to you, Brother Mark or Brother Ferdinand. Thank you.